everyone's in here because you have either hit, myself or one of our waste potential people up along the way. Um, don't really get an opportunity to do anything like this on the normal when the industry is at a normal pace. Just because everything's super fast paced, we're always working on a project and just keep moving on. So we wanted to do kind of a private only workshop, basically give some knowledge out to people who are interested in working with wasted potential. Um, and also gives us a good opportunity to get to know some of you guys along the way, as some of you guys in here are going to be future wasted potential members. um, that being said, I'm going to share my screen right now, just go over what roughly what we're doing each week, and then give a little breakdown of wasted. Let me see. Good, you guys can see my screen.
Good.
Dope. All right. This is just a general graphic here, just going over what we're doing. Hopefully, you guys all got this. If not, here's the schedule breakdown over here. Today, we're just going over introduction, type of tours. Next week, we'll be doing budgeting, a tour, then logistics, advancing and settling, security, and the social aspects of touring, which I would say are that's should be a pretty interesting one. And the final one, run of show, just going over kind of the scenarios of each type of tour, what a day in the life of it is essentially like. Um, got all of our panel members in here besides this guy, Manny Wolmers. I don't know if he's in here yet, but waiting on him. So just, yeah, this guy right here. Um, Today we'll go over basically, I'm going to break down what we do, kind of some history and wasted potential, in case you guys were curious. I'll introduce you guys to each one of our panel members. They'll kind of tell you the story of how they've gotten to where they are, how they got involved with Wasted. Then we'll go over some different scales of touring, anything from van tours to jingle balls and radio shows and festivals, everything. We'll go over some support versus headline, and then we'll end with a Q&A discussion. If you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll kind of take a look and go over them at the end of the session. And we'll, you guys can unmute yourselves at the end. Let's try and not talk over each other. And most importantly, since we're going to be doing this every week, covering different things, I want to
Yeah,
make sure. What's up?
you got Manny.
Oh, dope. What's up, Manny? Better
Excellent.
late than never. Um, uh, anyway, on the Q&A side, let's try and make sure our questions correlate with what we're talking about this week, ideally. If you really have a question you wanna know, we'll try and answer it. But we want to try and keep things correlated for each week. So if you have a question on budgeting, let's maybe try and save that for next Sunday. This one, let's keep it pretty general within the types of tours and questions. I'll also have some questions for the panel. Um, Starting off with wasted potential. Wasted potential got started. We originally started as a concert promotions company, um, out of Chicago. An interesting fact: Levi and Jordan both helped on the concert promotion side as well. So they've seen this thing kind of come up from the promotion side into the tour management, production, and everything else side. We typically we do so many different things at Wasted Potential. This seminar is obviously covering the tour management position, with some production management in there as well. Um, we'll see how this goes and maybe do some other webinars, but this one is just going to be going over tour management. Um, yeah, overall, I mean, if you guys have questions about other things we do, we can do that in the Q&A, as this is a pretty general episode. But I will start by introducing our panel now. We'll start with Jordan Levine. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell us how you kind of got here.
Yeah, so let me just flip this over here. And cool. Yes, my name is Jordan. As Chad mentioned, I got into this with him in the beginning from doing this promoting shows with him in Chicago and in college and whatnot. Started off as a merch guy, doing van tours and smaller shows and whatnot, and then just kind of networked your way through it, and eventually started working on some bigger shows. Now I mainly work for Bozzy, and I help out with Chad and Cotton and some of the other guys on consulting for other clients and kind of doing some of the budgeting for other tours that we send out and things like that. And yeah, you're gonna hear me talk about van tours today, and we're gonna have a good time.
Sweet. Let's pass it on to, we'll just keep going in line here. So let's pass it on to Anthony Cotton. Feel free to unmute yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself. That's my dog. I'm gonna mute myself.
What's up? My name is Cotton. I met Chad 5 years ago as his lighting tech for Somo. Since then, I have grown in many areas. I know a little bit about lighting. I'm an audio engineer, but my main thing now is a PM. Just like Jordan, I work with Bozzy. I work with Juice World, Trippy Red. I'm kind of the only PM for Wasted, so I'm kind of really excited because we need more production people. So yeah, let's have fun.
Dope. Cool. We'll keep it moving over with Levi Wilcox. I think you're unmuted already.
Yeah. Hey guys. All right. So I met Chad back in college when we were playing baseball actually, and then started doing concert promoting with him. After I graduated, he threw me on a Somo tour as a lighting tech, and then kind of became an LD, and then from there became a TM and a LD. From there, I've just been with Masego and GoldLink since then. Yeah, I think that's pretty much my path, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, the last two guys, Cotton and Levi, have both started out in the lighting world and then transformed over into the production worlds, which is interesting because most companies, you don't really have the ability to pivot. Levi, I remember, just hit me up. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm kind of interested in tour managing."
I do want to nap.
Oh, hey, Myra, make sure you mute yourself for us.
Oh, so sorry.
All good. Anyway, it's pretty interesting to be able to have that ability. So, if you guys are tour managers out there and you get an opportunity, it doesn't always mean, if you're interested in audio or interested in lighting or video walls or anything, you can always end up getting into those within Wasted Potential, which is really nice. And that brings me to Manny, who did some video wall work on a tour randomly as well. But feel free to take it, Manny.
Yeah, compared to the other two guys, I kind of come from a little bit of a different background. I went to school for business management and audio recording technology. So when I got out of college, I went to school and, did that internship thing. But then I started working at Electric Lady Studios as an assistant engineer. Then I became studio manager there. Left that, got into advertising where I was a music coordinator. And then I kind of got into artist management, which is kind of how I met Chad because I had an artist that had a tour and we toured with them because I was the youngest one to go. The tour manager we hired couldn't make it and I just went instead. And then we started opening for Somo, which was one of Chad's artists that he was tour managing for. I met Chad as I was TMing for the opener. Kind of just reached out to him after that experience and we kind of just linked up and he brought me on as like a tour manager assistant, kind of assistant intern kind of thing. And then, just kind of met him through that.
Yep. Good old times.
Yeah.
And we got Justin Weatherspoon. I think he's in here, right? I'm just trying to look on my thing. And you could take the field if you're in.
Yep, I'm here. My name is Justin Weatherspoon. I've been tour managing for 9 years now. I met Chad through another touring guy that they were actually roommates at the time originally. I ended up hiring one of Chad's lighting directors for a tour, and kind of started building from there. And after that, I actually met Cotton. He came and saved the day as an audio guy on the tour that I was on. And that's really how I linked up with Wasted Potential. They just saw the growth that they had, and I was looking at making some different transitions. I actually come from the nightclub world. So I was a nightclub promoter before. I was working on some concerts here in Phoenix where I live because I wanted the after parties, and then just kind of learn what was going on with the crew that was there. And I have family that's in the music business, so I kind of just asked somebody to help me put my foot in the door and started to grow from there. So happy to be here, happy to be doing this for the next 6 weeks with you guys, to kind of teach you and mold you and add on to what you guys already know about what we do day to day.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another cool thing about Wasted is like we are literally from all over the country. You know, we have people from New York to LA, people who live in Florida or Chicago, Levi's Chicago. Myself, I'm in LA now, originally from Chicago. Cotton is in Detroit. Justin, you're in Arizona, right?
Yep.
We got Manny over in New York. Jordan is in LA. He's from Chicago as well. So we're really from all over the place. So there's no, you know, we're not going to not hire if you don't live in LA. So a lot of companies tend to do that, unfortunately, but we just want good people who do good work, aren't going to cause drama, and just we're all striving towards a goal. Next thing we're going to cover is, I guess we can just jump right into the types of tours, which is what this session is mostly covering. We'll start off on the lower realm of it, in a van or sprinter type of tour, and I will let Jordan explain some of those, which take it away.
Yeah, so van tours. Van tours are one of my favorites, and I think that's cool. And a lot of you guys who haven't done a lot of work previously will probably start off on a van tour because that's typically where artists start before they go to a bus. So van tours are super unique and different than a lot of other things because you're gonna have hotels almost every night, which changes everything for you, like logistically, as far as what you have to book and how you have to handle your accommodations and your timings and whatnot. Because on a bus, you obviously have a place to sleep and you'll do your driving while you're sleeping. But when you're on a van tour, everyone's kind of going to be crammed into a van. You're going to be all need to be at the same place at the same time, and that includes the artist usually. So you're trying to manage different schedules, and a lot of times you're going to end up being a tour manager / driver when you start off to get acquainted and that's just people are pulling multiple jobs essentially. So you could be the merch guy, the tour manager, and the driver. It could really vary. And something that's important for these kind of tours is knowing your timing, because you're gonna have to drive after shows and you're gonna have to drive before shows as well. So a lot of times you'll finish show and then drive like 4 hours and have to get 3-4 hours of sleep in some random city and then continue your drive in the morning. And so that's kind of a unique situation, and I think it's pretty important to just be diligent and be able to just kind of be on point with knowing what you're doing and where you want to be when you want to be there. And it's also interesting to kind of manage like personalities in that situation, but we'll talk about that later. But it's kind of like you have the artist and you have your whole crew at the same time, so you need to keep both parties happy and make sure that everyone's cool.
Yeah. Couple questions on van tours for you. So what was your first van tour that you personally went
on? First van tour, Huey Mack and Sammy Adams tour back in 2016, I think.
Got it. So it was a support tour for an artist, and you were the support band in a van.
Yeah, we were sleeping like 8 dudes in one hotel room, and like two or three in each bed, and then like a couple people on the floor. And those are the kind of grind tours that you start off with. That's kind of how you earn your stripes and like earn respect to the people around you. I feel like, and that's how you climb the ladder. It's not like it doesn't feel as good to just go straight to an arena tour without ever having like been in that situation where everything wasn't perfect, everything wasn't given to you. It feels like you earned it, and it feels like more rewarding when you get to that level.
Absolutely, yeah. It's adversity. You're just slowly working up the ranks of the types of tours. I've been there as well. You typically gotta sleep quite a bit to a hotel room to just make it work, especially if you're the support artist. Awesome, thank you for that. Next, we're gonna roll up, essentially graduating to the next rank, which would most likely be a single tour bus tour, or maybe a multiple tour bus tour. But Manny, let's go with you, explaining some things about bus tours, and just kind of how they work, and maybe how they're a little bit different from van tours, because I know you've done both as well.
Right. Yeah. So as Jordan was kind of mentioning, like you're sleeping on the bus after the show or in the beginning of the day. Basically, we'll get to a venue earlier than a van would, because you're the headliner usually. Even if you're a support in a bus, you're still showing up. Usually you get parking. So that's another thing. Logistically, you got to adjust for the size difference of the vehicle. So you'll be going to the venue, parking. Sometimes you'll have a trailer, depending on what you're having for the show. And yeah, the bus tour, usually get there early. Everybody's usually on the bus all together until you go into the venue. Everybody, the working crew kind of goes in first. Most times the bands is still on the bus, artists still on the bus. You kind of get that situated with, how just the run of schedule goes for the day, what time everybody needs to get going for get their day started. After the show, kind of get everybody back on the bus call times, what times everybody leaves. Same as Jordan was mentioning, everybody has to be at the same place at a certain time, keep the shows moving. But the difference is while we get to sleep on the bus, we get to have a driver on at night, kind of take us to the next show. So we can still get the rest, just a little different because we have to start our days earlier. So that's one thing that the bus provides. While we sleep, we're still able to go to the next show, wake up, do it all over again. Obviously, with the bus, it's a mobile home essentially for the length of the tour. So you're able to bring more things on instead of a van where you can only have your book bag or small suitcase at best, but you're able to kind of live in it a little more and make it a little more homey, bring snacks and all that kind of stuff on the bus, stuff that makes you feel at home. You usually have an outlet in your bunk or something like that, and you can kind of watch movies, charge your phone a little easier, lay down, get a good night rest, and then get right back at it the next day.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that a van tour, the main thing with a van tour is that when you wake up, getting to the next city is what you're battling. So that's part of your everyday battles, is like getting to, let's say you're in Chicago, you have a show in St. Louis, getting all the way down to St. Louis is one of the things you have to overcome every day. In a bus, you wake up and you're in St. Louis. You just have a longer day to, you have to build out a bigger show typically. So those are thank you for that, Manny. We're going to then pivot here to go to festivals. Let's pretend, let's go with Levi for festivals. And Levi, explain to us how a one-off festival typically works, meaning that it's just a random festival that you all fly to, and then also maybe how different running into a festival on tour might be, meaning you'd have tour dates and a festival kind of just sandwiched in the middle there and knocking that out.
One-offs, those are pretty laid back, guys. You usually fly in the day before, so you minimize your risk. Show day would be the next day. You fly out the next day. But when it comes to festivals, they're very eclectic. So if it depends where you are as well. Like you could do an entire tour of festivals in Europe, right? You could do an entire tour of festivals in Australia, but that's all fly dates. So festivals are very, you get your stripes with them for sure. And when it comes to those, I think the most important things is being extremely detail oriented with advancing, because you're not usually going to be the headliner at festivals most of the time. So you got to be on your A game when it comes to making sure your production needs are advanced well, and also timing. because it's not a headline show, it's not like a headline tour. When you do festivals, they don't fuck around with like changeover timing and stuff. Like they'll cut your set short if you guys are, you know, and then you got the artist pissed off at you on that one. But again, like you can do a festival tour with a van. We've had to do that in Belgium. We had to do it in buses and trailers.
Who were you with when you were doing that? What artist?
That was with Masego, and that was a 6-piece band. That was all across Europe. Um, you know, when you start taking buses international though too, you're also dealing with a lot of ferries and stuff. So it's weird when you gotta the timing and shit. It's more of a grind than it is just the U.S. And then also again with flights, because these festivals some days might be back to back, like you don't have a travel day in between. So again, making sure you're moving your team well ahead of, you know, flight times. It's just being on the ball, I would say, with festivals. But again, they can be very rewarding because what you get to run into, at least myself as an LD and a TM, the amount of production you get to play with, like lighting wise and video wise, is not something the artist can usually afford on his own tour. So you get a really more attuned like what the next level shit with it, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Great touching on that. I think festivals too um, are interesting in the sense of the challenge they bring. Um, like you said, you know, people you don't have time. Let's say, you know, someone gets the wrong back line, or you have to, a lot of festivals you have to wing. It's essentially winging it. The sound checks really aren't there for a lot of the time, which, you know, can impact a show, especially like on a Masego where you have a 6-piece band. um, and typically, unfortunately for us, you know, festivals like Coachella and Lollapalooza and some of these other big ones, everyone wants to bring the biggest show possible. So you have these poor, you know, festival production managers and stage managers dealing with these massive setups, rough changeover times, no sound checks. So there's a lot of room for error on festivals, unlike a headline tour where, you know, if something, you have some major problem, you guys as the tour managers have the ability to push doors 20 minutes, or, you know, make audibles, tell the support acts that they're not going to get the sound check today. With festivals, you don't have that leverage, and unfortunately festivals tend to be bigger, more people, more pressure on the artists. So
I
yeah,
feel like
that's
festivals is important to set the expectations for the artists, especially with like the younger artists that you work with, especially like sometimes artists you have like on a support tour and then they're gonna go do a festival in the middle of their support tour and like, you know, not really know what to be expecting. And I feel like it's important for them to know like that everything isn't gonna be the same as it's gonna be when they go to a regular show because it's not their show. And I feel like
yeah.
getting that across some of these younger artists.
Absolutely. Yeah, we run into that quite a bit where an artist wants to bring their big stage onto a festival. The festival can't withhold it. I remember Cotton on Juice World, we had these massive, you know, Cotton and Justin know about these things, these massive vehicles that weigh thousands of pounds. These festivals are like, oh yeah, that's not going to fit on our stage. The artist wants it. We want it because it brings the show up. But there's always, you know, you gotta, um, you know, it's a lot of compromises that happen with festivals. So that kind of brings us to our next thing, which would be a radio show, which is similar to a festival, but much different as well. And we will have Justin cover those.
So yeah, a lot of what Levi was saying about festivals, a lot of that applies to radio shows too. It's just very timed. Everything has to run a certain way, and I think Jordan just mentioned it. It kind of sets the tone for the younger artists. When you go and play Coachella and you're not one of those first two lines where your name is pretty big, you're down there towards the bottom where you can barely see your name. That's where you learn really how to do shows, how to um, be timely, because there are even radio shows. There's not a lot of sound check. There's not a lot of change over time. You want to bring your band. You want to bring your full rig. You want to bring your full setup. it's just not going to happen on a lot of these radio shows. Especially like I just in December did a iHeart's Jingle Ball tour, where you basically they're all fly days. So basically, Levi alluded to this a little bit, but basically with fly dates, if you can, you fly in the day before. Everybody can get a full night's rest. The next day is your show day, and then the next day maybe you fly home, or that next day you might be up at 6 a.m. to catch a flight. You're going to the next city, and you're rolling right into your sound check or your load-in time or whatever that may be. So festivals and radio shows, I think they really go hand in hand because they're for the most part fly dates. Um, and especially on those like iHeart shows, they do these things like turntable stages. So basically, it's a big circle. They have it cut in half. On one side of it, they're actually performing on that side, and then after that set is over, they rotate it. And the reason they're doing that is because on the back side of the stage, which is covered by a backdrop or whatever it is, they're setting up the next performer. So once the person in front on the A side finishes, they turn that stage around. The B side person starts performing, and they're doing their changeover on the A side, which is now on the back side. So it's very meticulous. It's very everything is structured. You know, if you're not the headliner, if you're one of the openers or considered an opener on a radio show, you really have to be on top of everything, especially as a tour manager, because I've had artists show up late, they don't care. They're streaming live, they're doing radio broadcasts, and they do not care that your artist is not there. They will fill that time with somebody else, and they will not give you your time back. So um, that's
wild.
also where you get humbled. You can get humbled with a radio show, with a festival, because if you're not on your game, they will let you know.
Yeah. And there's implications that come with radio shows too. Like if you are late or unprofessional or you're messing up, it's a radio that is putting this thing on.
Yeah,
So it climbs up the ranks, and there can be impacts that go to management of like, hey, we really like you as an artist, but it's tough to work with you guys or whatever. It goes to the label. And the turntable stages are crazy. I don't know if you guys have ever worked on them in the crowd here in this Zoom meeting, but the first time you run into one of those, it's pretty wild. The band's all in place, everyone's ready. They change that thing right when they're off stage, and you're up. There's no changeover times in radio shows compared to festivals where, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes.
I just wanted to mention one thing.
Yeah.
With the radio shows. When you guys are touching on how strict they can be, I've seen it happen where they don't pay the full amount because either ended early or you didn't finish your whole set. And once you start, if the agency gets word that they're not getting the full second deposit or whatever it is, you're the first person they're coming to, And once you start messing around with the money, and that's on, if that's something that they can put back on you, that's not going to be a good name for you in the industry.
Yep, absolutely. And that's another thing where Wasted Potential comes into play, because we've now built this thing up and we have a reputation, not just, it's one thing that I try and talk a lot with the newer people on is like, there's a bigger impact than just yourself. Like in this industry, we're trying to build a bigger thing here because we've all been there, I think, before, just as individual freelancers, there's no sense of team. Your next gigs it's not really a team effort to find them. So we have this giant team that we all have each other's backs, and we all can answer questions and go do, fun stuff together as well. But it's interesting with all these types of tours. And I try and explain to the newer people that by you messing up on tour, it's bigger than that. Now, let's say, Manny was on tour, ran into some big issue, the management knows about it, gets back. Jordan then is looking for a job, but they already had worked with Manny, and Manny has that Wasted Potential tag to him. Now they might already have an impression on Jordan. We try and keep that as a good impression, right? So it's like, oh, I already worked with Wasted Potential. They're great. You get the job. So we always try and keep away from the negative impact of, being on a team. Let's go to the private gigs and after shows. These are a totally separate thing. I guess under private gigs, that could be anything from like a private college bringing you in to some birthday party or a club appearance. Cotton, you can take it away on those.
I'll start with private gigs. Private gigs are they're fun. The private gigs I've done, like weddings, corporate events. They're probably really my favorite type of gig. You get treated the best. The food is amazing. The gear is normally top notch. So those gigs are really fun. And easy typically, because they typically, for like a wedding or something, they treat the artists like they're wards, so they give you whatever you want, and it's an easy day, and it's just wonderful. After parties, personally, I hate after parties. It's no partying after party. Typically, like for me, all my after party experiences with hip hop acts. And hip hop acts do after parties a little bit differently. Typically, they're after the show, so you're tired. So your day is typically longer. And then, say for example, he doesn't supposed to hit the stage until 1:30. So typically my day will start at like 9 a.m. And you do the show and you're tired and you want to go to sleep, but you have to go do an after party. So after parties typically is the artist's way of making quick cash. It's always cash. Tax free is their way of making a quick bag. So one of the things is you have to remember that you're still there to do a job. So like once we get an after party, I'll show up. First thing first is to count the cash. That's the main thing. Make sure the cash is there, tight. Take it to a secure location. Either you collect it, or sometimes the artist will collect it themselves. Or if you're lucky, like I said, I do hip hop acts. So a lot of hip hop acts have security guards. I would give it to the security guard, stuff like that. And again, if I have security, we do a walkthrough. Because typically a club is tight. Clubs are always tight. So you have to, do a walkthrough, like how my artist gonna get from his vehicle to the booth. Typically, it's not an easy way to get to the booth. You're gonna have some interactions. You're gonna, people are gonna see him. It's gonna be a scene. So it's basically moving fast. You get there, and once he's there, you have fun. Typically, like the crew will come out sometimes. You party, drink a little bit, but again, you're still there to do a job. He's there for 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour. He performs, and then he leaves. Go back to the bus or go to the hotel, get some sleep. But after parties is something you just got to get used to. Like I said, it's typically after a show. That's what makes it an after party. So you're already tired. The artist is tired. So you have to sometimes deal with their attitude. Some artists like after parties because of the cash, but they don't like after parties because they have to perform. So you have to kind of deal with things. And like sometimes, like for Trippy, who I have experience with, he's underage. So sometimes you get to after party and they say, oh, he can't drink in the booth. So you have to learn how to kind of talk, finagle things like, hey, well, can he drink in the hallway, stuff like that. So as you get experience, you can kind of build that relationship and, work your way around things like that. But yeah, after parties are after parties.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting stuff on the after parties. One thing I think that I've learned the hard way with after parties are making sure you get paid before your artist walks into the building.
Yeah. He doesn't get out the vehicle until you get paid.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably the most important thing, because with the clubs come a lot of hustling. The club promoters are there for a reason. They are there to try and get to wring you dry as much as they can, whether that's trying to make you play 3 songs instead of 2, or, you know, not paying you, getting you in there, having people see you, and then fleeting. Yeah, there's some sketchy promoters out there, and we work with a lot of hip hop artists and pop artists. So those are usually the people getting booked for these club appearances. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on in this world. Anybody else have any funny stories or anything to touch on the clubs and private gigs? Con, what's an interesting private gig or that you've had worked on?
A private gig or a after party? Private gig would probably be
like maybe your favorite private gig.
The
Like
wedding.
who brought you guys in and with what artists?
maybe the wedding. Yeah, Bozzy did a wedding back, I don't know, months ago. We got like a private jet. I got to, you know, dress up in a nice suit, you know, eat a nice steak. I mean, it was, yeah, that's probably my favorite. It was a private wedding gig.
Yeah,
Can you talk about, I think this is important to touch on like a more serious note. Can you talk about some of the like ways to carry yourself as a tour manager when you're in those situations in the after parties, and how to like not get fired, essentially? Because there's so many different things you could do to like really fuck yourself up.
There's so many. So you, as a tour manager,
balance.
you are you represent the artist at all times. So no matter if it's after party, a show, radio hosting, you always have to remember you represent the artist. So like I said, after parties are parties. You're at a club, there's alcohol involved, you know, weed involved, things like that. But you have to remember you're not there to really enjoy yourself. You're there to do a job. So I think always having that in your mind, you know, you can't count cash being intoxicated. You can't, you know, make sure the safety of your artist is in good hands if you're intoxicated. So you have to be mindful. Obviously, it's nothing wrong. Like our industry is a different type of industry. So like, you know, you might have a drink or something, but you have to know your limits. You have to know your boundaries, and always remember who you're representing. You know, the artist, being a TM, you are the extension of the artist. You know, you're extension of management. You are the guy on the road to keep the artist safe, to make sure he makes his money and things like that. So you just have to be mindful of how you carry yourself in all situations. I mean, just not even that, just how you know, respond to situations, you know, your anger and things like that. Like I mean, that's a whole nother conversation to talk about etiquette and how to carry yourself as a tour manager.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll touch on that in I think it's session 5 maybe or something.
Yeah, that's a good conversation.
Some of the traits of being a tour manager that are valuable, because that is a major part of tour managing. Let's keep it moving here. We're trying to keep these sessions to roughly an hour 20 for everyone listening, just so you guys know. And obviously they'll be at the same time every Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. So let's keep it moving in the types of gigs. So we went over different types of shows. One thing to maybe touch on for us would be support versus headline. There's a lot of different things that come with, you know, with being support versus being the headliner. That being said, I guess we can start with one, etiquette and kind of what to expect. Anyone from the panel want to take the lead on this one?
I'll touch on it real quick.
All right. Cool.
So one thing to note on support tours versus headline tours is just the way to carry yourself and what to kind of expect the way that your tour is going to go in general. When you're a support artist, you're not the priority. It's not about you. You're there to do a job, and your job is to fill 20 to 45 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes before the headline artist goes on. And I think that's really important to know your role and to like make sure that you're setting those expectations. I'll say that a lot throughout this series about setting expectations. I think it's one of the most important things you can do as a tour manager, because as long as your artist knows what to expect from you and you know what to expect from your artist and you guys have a clear line of communication, everything will be smooth. Artists don't like to show up and have surprises. So I think a lot of that comes down to like, you're going to end up in some tough situations sometimes where you come from like a headlining tour to a support tour, and you have to kind of backtrack and let them know that that's okay, and that it's not, you know, it's not them, it's just the role they're there to play. For example, we were on tour with Bazzi, and we went on tour with Camila Cabello and opened for her. And then we went straight into our headline tour shortly thereafter that, and then went straight from that back to opening up for Justin Timberlake in Europe. So we go from, the U.S. where he had full production, everything that he wants, crowds singing all the words back to him, to going into this huge arena in Europe for our first time and thinking, damn, this is crazy. We're playing a massive arena with Justin Timberlake. And then you go out there the first night and not everyone knows the songs, not everyone's singing, and you're playing on a third of the stage that they have out there, because that's all they're giving you, and you have to walk through the crowd to get to the stage, because that's the path that they have for you. There's not really anything you can do about that, and it's kind of important to just be able to swallow your pride and know that's okay. Like, you're not always going to get a green room, you're not always going to get a rider. Sometimes you're going to have to finesse and put your artist make a closet and do a day room, or you're going to have to go get a day room in a hotel and spend that money, depending on the level that you're at. But it's about making the best of the situations you have and being versatile and just being a problem solver, really, because as long as they're happy, the artist's happy, everything's cool. But sometimes that could be easier, and sometimes that could be more difficult depending on the personality of who you're working with.
Yeah,
and it's
definitely.
really fun to talk to the people that you're the headliners team. The way you interact with them is a reflection of the artist and a reflection of his team. So going back to what Cotton said, you always want to make sure that you're on point. You're really respectful with them. When it comes to guest lists, you're not going to get everything you want. You need to be, prioritizing that, especially in LA and New York. Management's going to want you to sort out a bunch of passes and this and that, and you're going to have to finesse it, and you're going to have to talk with the security team from the headliner and be mindful of what their needs are, and make sure that you work kind of symbiotically with them, and you establish the rapport with them throughout the tour, and then they'll help you out more. It's about being a good guy at that point. Kiss a little eye.
Yeah. There's actually some interesting scenarios we've been running too on the support headline front too lately. Is where one of the Wasted Potential artists actually opens up for another Wasted Potential artist, which it actually is pretty fun there. I think Manny, you were just on a tour that was happening, right?
Yeah, I was just on tour with Chelsea Cutler, and we had Alexander 23 open up, which is another Wasted Potential artist. I saw BJ watching as well, so if he's out there.
Yeah, BJ's yep. He's Alexander 23's tour manager, another Wasted Potential guy. Cool.
So basically, I saw Jesse too. He's over there with X Lovers as well.
Yeah.
I saw like a lot of times where basically guest lists would get too crazy, but there are certain shows like New York, LA, where guest list is not even in my hands. It's up to management, because they have record label people coming in and family and people that just I wouldn't know if I had to. But basically like run a show schedule. If it's another Wasted Potential manager, we're able to talk more in depth about like what's going on for the day. Same with other TMs that are going on, like what's going on today, like how can we, if something goes wrong, we got to take more time, cut your time a little short, move things around just to get time in. Same with stage setup. If there's multiple drum sets or whatnot, whatever equipment going on, whatever their needs are, our stage setup, obviously as a headliner, will go first. Then it would be the support act. So we do our best to accommodate, especially when it's multiple Wasted Potential people. But the same, even if it's not, like you kind of want that chain of command of knowing, hey, like you're not going to get to the green room today. Like some venues are smaller than others, so you'll only get certain things, or you're way in the back instead of right next to where the headliner stage is. So it's just about communication though, and just getting all those details worked out though.
Absolutely. Levi, how important would you say being on time is as a support artist? I know you were out with Gold Link on the Tyler the Creator tour.
Yeah, man. The thing is funny because like when you get to arenas like that and you're opening up, you'd think it'd be kind of more stressful, but it's actually one of the easier tours. The only thing with that is timing. There's absolutely no reason that you should have your artist late to whatever sound check they give you and being on and off the stage, because that's the only thing they care about. If you're first of three on an arena run like that, that's, just make sure you have your artists in or around the venue, maybe 2 hours prior to doors, because that's usually your time window to try to get a sound check in. And then of course, when he's
as a TM and an LD, again, I'm not side stage. I'm not there to walk him to the stage. So it's very important that I have him side stage maybe 5 minutes before set, 10 minutes I like to. And that's when you got to kind of rely on your team. So I had my security guard always walk him, of course, from the green room to the stage. But being punctual is really the only thing that you really need to focus on as an opener, because if you're not, you're going to hear it from the headlining's TM or the production manager. I think,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's all really good points. I want to keep things moving just because I want to try and get this thing wrapped up completely by about 2:15, and I want to have time for all of you guys watching to chime in as well here. So we'll also talk a little bit more about headlining tours a little further in maybe session 2 and 3. Let's start with Q&A. I'm going to ask a question to start off. If you guys want, feel free to, I'm trying to think of the best function here. Is there the raise your hand function, Jordan? Can you see that on Zoom?
Yeah, there's a reactions thing like on the bottom here, but I think if everybody just wants to type their questions, then you can just take them in order one by one.
Yeah. Let's have you guys type your question, and then I'll select it, and then once we select it, just unmute yourself, and you can.
I can spotlight your video, and you can ask the question or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Or just whatever you guys want to do.
All right. Let's start with. I'm gonna ask this question to Justin. On radio shows, I know you went over those. Would you say that all artists are treated pretty fairly, or does it still feel like you're opening up for other artists?
You're an opener. I mean, you have a headliner on your radio shows. So that headliner is going to be treated like the headliner. If you're not that headliner or co-headlining, you may have, just like in a supporting tour situation, you may have a smaller dressing room. You may not be allowed certain production. I know we haven't talked about it a lot, but like special effects in certain situations, the headliner says, no, I don't want anybody else to use pyro or cryo. I want to be the only person that gets to use cryo on the show. So you definitely will still get treated like an opener. But they try to make it as fair as possible for people, because they know that you're not just a little guy or anything like that. You're not a little guy, but you're still just somewhat of an opener on this show. And it changes. You gradually grow. I think one of the biggest things that you guys were just talking about on the last topic, just don't be a burden. That's the biggest thing, is don't go into shows, whether it's a radio show and you're an opener or even the headliner, to not be a burden, because it does come back around. You may be the opener on the radio show this year, but the next year, you have a single that takes off, or your artist has a single that takes off, and you could be that headliner. And those people, definitely, they remember it, and they don't forget, and they tell each other. When you go from city to city, festival to festival, Golden Voice to AEG to live, they tell ech other.
Yeah. The industry is a lot smaller than I think we all think. Word gets around, and it tends to filter the assholes out over time. Looks like we're getting some good questions in here. Definitely encourage everyone. We got about 40 people in here right now, so encourage everyone to ask questions, because we want to get to know you guys a little bit too here over these next 6 weeks.
Yo, can I do that radio show thing real quick? One thing I think is important for radio shows that makes it unique as well is that radio shows, like the lineup for radio shows, isn't always representative of who's the biggest artist. Like sometimes those lineups are completely they make no sense. Like we've had lineups where some of the biggest artists are the third act up, and a small artist could be the very last act up. And I think it's a lot of times those shows are political, and a lot of times the labels are fighting to get their artists at different spots in it, wherever most people are going to be in the building. So that's really important to know, and to let your artists know as well, because some of these younger artists walk in the building and they're like, yo, why am I this? Why is this person here? It could be because Halsey has a flight to catch, and so she needs to go on it the third act so that she can be out of there in time, or so and so's flight doesn't get into later, so she's going to headline. Like, we've seen all kinds of crazy shit happen, and you grow a lot over those radio shows, and you'll see yourself come on. Like, you'll do shows one summer and have no green room, and you'll go do a show the next summer, and you'll be, second to last act, having yourself a room every night. So that's all. It varies a lot. There's a lot of politics involved there.
Yeah, very true. Awesome. All right, I'm going to start getting into some of these questions. We got about 10, 15 minutes left, so let's try and keep our answers relatively short and sweet so we can try and cover all these. No, this question's from Connor.
I'll spotlight him so he can ask it.
Yeah, sounds good. And Connor and whoever else, feel free to ask it to a certain person or whatever you want to do. Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I guess my question within whether you're a support or whether you're a headliner, for you guys, do you have specific stories of, there was a lot of technical issues and you started an hour late? How did you handle it? So that can be for any of you in those specific instances, if someone comes to mind.
Awesome.
Actually, someone comes to mind for that one real quick.
Levi?
Yeah, we had a show. I was with Masego, and it was a festival, and about 2 minutes into the set start, everything went black, everything went dark, and we come to find out that one of the house audio engineers put a wedge on top of my drummer's sub. He didn't strap it down. It fell and ripped all the socket out. So we didn't start for an hour later, and they were trying to cut our set time in half.
Sato is power for everyone who doesn't know that.
Yeah, power. Sorry about that. And I had to pretty much argue that I'm not going to cut our set because this was not our fault at all. I had to go all the way up to higher management just to clear it. But sometimes you just got to be firm and put your foot down because your artist is getting paid for that time.
Dang, that's tough.
Absolutely. Let's take one more example from somebody. Anyone? Cotton, do you have any examples of technical problems?
Miami,
What's up?
FIU Miami.
FIU Miami. Yep, exactly. Yeah, another. And I want to touch on the fact that typically the first shows of tours are going to be the most common that you see times get moved around because of technical problems. Cotton, go ahead.
I think we all have a list of examples. I think I'm going to switch that and turn it into you're going to run into problems. I think it's no way. Shit happens.
There's no way.
I think what makes TMs good and, make a PM good is how you react to certain problems. I think we all have had, bus issues and, border issues and things like that jeopardize the show. But I think that's one of the biggest things as being a TM is that when problems come up, you're looked to as the problem solver. I think that's one of the biggest traits of a TM is knowing how to problem solve. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't really want to talk about a certain problem because we all have problems. I just think as we learn and we grow and things, you just learn how to stay cool-headed and learn how to get through certain things. Because you're going to have problems. It can be a bus overheating in the middle of the summer and you're late 3 hours to load in, or you got to go to Canada and you for some reason somebody forgot weed on the bus and you're stuck at the border. It's a lot of things that can happen. So I think you just have to be prepared for things like that, and just handle them.
Yeah, to jump in on that, like me and you, Cotton, have had that experience when we were getting to that San Francisco show with Chelsea.
Yeah.
The bus broke down in Eureka, California, and me and Cotton had to go run out and get a U-Haul, and I had to get everybody off the bus, ready to unload the trailer we had, get the stuff on the U-Haul with Cotton and Griffin driving down to San Fran. I met them in a minivan that I rented and got everybody off the bus and in the minivan and did the show.
Yeah.
All the time, man. There's so many damn
Mhm.
stories like that. I remember I had a bribe on a Somo tour. We were all in Taco Bell, and the artist's little brother was doing merch. And I was the tour manager. I was like, all right, while we're eating, go take this van and go fill up fuel. We were in a 15 passenger little van. He goes in to the gas station. Somehow he put diesel fuel in a regular fueled van. The van's completely fucked. I start driving it, and I start hearing it pop. We go on the side of the road. The whole thing's fucked. I call I think we were around Chicago, and we had a show in Louisville, Kentucky, or somewhere around St. Louis to Louisville. So it was maybe 300 miles. Um, I called a tow truck driver, and tow trucks, I didn't know, but they're only supposed to tow you under 50 miles away. I think 50 is like their cap. I bribed this guy like $4,000 to just tow us 300 miles all the way to Louisville, Kentucky. And the artist is tweeting live. So he's like, hey, we're showing up, and there's 2,000 people outside. I remember it was sold out. And they're all just cheering as this tow truck comes up. It was pretty wild times.
Classic.
Yeah, but let's keep taking some more questions. That was a good one, Connor. Appreciate you, man. Feel free to mute yourself once you're done. I think you did it. Thanks. Let's go to the next one. Bob. He says, how do you actually? You just take it, man. Unmute yourself if you're Bob Pringer. If you're on.
Hey there. Yeah, so I was just wondering, as someone with a lot of experience doing van and trailer tours, TM front of house, what does it take to get to that next step of doing that on a bus tour? If the artists that I work for have that opportunity, then I'll probably be the guy for the job. But how do I go to the next step? Or what are you looking for out of that step?
Absolutely. Jordan, you want to take this one?
I think exactly what you said is exactly how you do it. Like, I guess not every time, but you were saying like if you were with the artist who's starting doing these small tours and they build to the arena tours, that's how you get there, and that's like completely true. And I think that's super important is not thinking about necessarily using every artist as a building block, but kind of trying to find an artist that you can stick with from the like start and ride it to the top, because that's the most exciting and the most rewarding to see somebody, you see yourself packed into a van with these guys, and then to see yourself go on do like, a 3-bus nationwide tour, playing arenas with these guys. That's way cooler to me than to go just jump right into an arena tour that I didn't really, grind my way up there with that artist. So I think that's like the best way to do it, the most organic way to do it. Other than that, it's really just about networking and kind of having the right contacts in the right areas. But I feel like you still have to earn your stripes, and you still have to, have that knowledge of those smaller tours, because that will teach you everything you need to know to be successful in those bigger tours. I mean, anybody else can touch on that as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say on that front, that's kind of nice where Wasted Potential comes in handy too, is because typically when we put someone on tour, it's going to be a smaller level run. The first run they're on, it's like a growing run. BJ, for example, who's in here right now, he's tour managed Kid Quill, who opened up for Somo, so we met each other back then. He came into Wasted Potential. We put him on Alexander 23, and Alexander 23 opened up for Chelsea as a support run in a van. And this fall, barring Corona setbacks, it's going to happen maybe in the spring, but then he's going to be moving on to do his own bus tour, another probably arena support run, and then maybe a bigger headline, and then maybe 2 buses. So before you know it, you'll go from a van to multiple buses, private jets, and crazy shit before it happens overnight virtually. So it's pretty wild. Let's keep it rolling. Unless anyone else wants to touch on the growth factor. Anyone from the panel? You guys?
I was just gonna say, don't sleep on those van tours though.
Yeah, those
like
are the best times.
Somebody else said you really earn your stripes on the van tours. And I mean, you really do. You see I've seen problems on van tours that I know club level, theater, amphitheater, and arena level tour managers would be lost because they got propelled up to these big stages right away, and they didn't know how to handle these basic, what seems like basic issues that come up on the road. So don't sleep on van tours. And Chad kind of said it too. Like I had the most fun on van tours. Yeah, it's great to have 10 and 15 buses and all these trucks and all this different crew that you're on the road with. But you really, really become a family when you're in these smaller situations, these tighter knit groups. So for sure, don't sleep on those van tours. But it's great to be on an arena tour for sure.
You're earning the respect of the artists too while you're doing that stuff, because they see you're running multiple jobs. You're working your ass off when you're a tour manager and that kind of thing. So you're earning the respect of your artists for the future, which is super important for your longevity, I feel like.
Right. It's the bond you build with everyone, and you able to network with all that. Like the artist sees you grinding out there, like Jordan was saying, and they can count on you.
Yeah, facts.
Sure.
Those are all really good.
Sure.
Douglas Torres, let's unmute him, Jordan.
Hey, what's going on? Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, so no, kind of just a general question. And I was also curious of like Mateen's questions, but I guess hopefully we'll get to hers as well. I'm just curious if you guys have any insight on like when tours maybe are supposed to be happening again. If you have been working with any booking agents that like have any insight with what's going on with obviously our situation we're currently in. And also just kind of like what you are seeing for Wasted Potential, if you guys like have more tours that you're seeing kind of coming down the pipeline. Obviously you're building this webinar, which I'm super thankful for. I'm sure everyone here is super stoked to be here. And I'm just curious of kind of like what about the future and or the situation we're in, if any of you guys have any sort of insight.
Yeah. So right now, right honestly, if Corona wasn't happening, we would have just got done with Coachella. We had Justin, Cotton, myself, Jordan, we were all working on Rust. There's so many different tours that kind of just fell through the cracks. I think some of these guys would have been in Europe and doing other stuff. Countless tours we would have right now. I don't think anyone really has an idea of when we're going to see shows again or how it's going to change. A lot of people think, just like back in the day, you used to just get a ticket, walk right in, and then we have security. So you're going through metal detectors. Now people think you're going to have to get your temperature taken as well as the metal detectors. But no one really knows the answer to that yet. The more I think about it, the more I think we're not going to see it till there's a vaccine or only really small runs, a couple hundred cappers or something. But we'll see. The reason why we're doing this too is there's going to be a massive surge when this stuff all comes back. These artists nowadays make a lot of their money on the road. So we want to make sure we, can keep expanding our team and take people that, we feel like will do a good job. Anyone else have anything to chime in on that?
I actually just had a call with one of the managers I work with. His name's Justin. He manages Sego yesterday. And what pretty much like two things is we had 3 pretty wide tours through the end of the year that just got pushed to 2021 now. That, and then him as a manager, what he wants to try to see is doing kind of a high value ticket intimate setting for maybe 20 people. So that's something that could be on the horizon as well.
Yeah, I totally could see that happening. Almost like a meet and greet, except it's a concert, and the ticket is pretty high for sure. Good stuff.
I was just gonna say too. I think this is the perfect setting for whether you're new or you're up and coming, because we're about to learn how to tour differently. Even through all of these 6 series that we're doing on being a tour manager, it's an ever-changing industry, but it's going to change a lot. And so coming in right now as things are changing, you have the chance to learn it now coming in. Whereas,
good point.
A lot of the old heads, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So, a lot of them they're not going to know how to handle social distancing in tours and things like that. So this is a really good time to learn the trade so that you can come in and be the fresh mind out there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I also was hearing that 12 people on a bus might not be a thing anymore.
Thank
Um,
God.
because as everyone, if anyone's been on a bus tour, you know, once one person gets sick, it is a wrap.
Yep.
Almost everyone is going to be sick. So a lot of people think the days of, you know, full 12 bunker with an artist in the back, 13 people on a bus aren't going to happen. But, you know, we'll see, man. Who knows? We have more questions coming in too. We're obviously going to go a little bit over time here, but we haven't really been losing anyone, so we're down to go a little bit longer if you guys want to. Gianna, let's go to your question if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep, all good.
All right.
Yep.
My question, I come from van tours and like smaller venues, but how do you handle if this is a situation, if you have a headliner and a support both sharing one bus? Like, what's the dynamic like?
Great question.
How do you handle the power struggle if there is one? Kind of how that handles.
I'm gonna have Manny take this one because I know he's actually on a tour that ran into some problem. You don't got to say the artist names or anything, but go ahead, give us a little.
Right. No, it's just like we were talking about before, the kind of chain of command thing. When there's issues on the bus, they need to know that you're the guy or person to talk to, you know, with your artists and with them as well, kind of what we expect and what they should expect as well, you know. Just kind of respecting your space, know your role kind of thing as well. You know, for them, they have to kind of know that, hey, this is the headliner's bus. And for us, we got to also know that, hey, we need to share. So we also have to account for them when we do things ourselves. The picking of the bunks, you know, where certain things are going to be, where the snack drawer is, where their clothes are going to go, you know, just etiquette of the bus. If our artist wants, you know, the bus clean, you got to make sure you stay on them just like you would your crew. Vice versa as well. You know, if you see something from us that's doing something to them, you know, like leaving our junk drawer, you know, junk around just in their area, you know, like, you know, just keep it clean. It's always the safest rule, just for everybody. And etiquette like that, like, you know, like chain of command, that's what's the most important thing. Like, what are the rules, and establish that from the beginning, so that way there's no problems later on, you know.
Yeah. And I remember on a tour that we've had, typically the managers are friends when artists are opening up, right? Like usually the headliner has their manager has a homie manager who wants the artist to go on the road. They set them up together essentially. But I remember a scenario where the managers kind of force it. They're like, all right, save some money, you know, tour, live in the bus with the headliner. They don't know each other. Typically that is a scenario we try and stay away from, but sometimes you can't, you know, you can't stay away from it if the managers force it. So there's been scenarios where the artists don't get along. And then there's an old saying, nothing brings people together like mutual hate. And yeah, you know, that you can put two and two together. People start being like, oh yeah, well, fuck that guy, talking behind their back, and something comes to a head. That's a great question. Anyone else have anything about it? Sharing space on the road with a headliner support. Covered it. Awesome. We'll move on to the next one, but thanks, John. That was a good one. Cal Rawlings, if you want to unmute yourself, go for it. What's up, buddy?
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
You good?
Great. Yeah, I just, my question was mostly about for folks on a long tour, especially whether it's, I guess in this situation, either a van or a bus tour, for the TMs, what's y'all's experience been like when you have the day-to-day either with you or not with you on the run? And some of them obviously it's going to be, they'll just fly in for one or two dates. But as somebody who does day-to-day, I always I'm interested to hear people's takes. Like, I want to be helpful, but I don't want to be in the way, so I'm interested to
hear. We don't want you there. We don't want you.
That's such a great question, man. And it's something that happens all the time. Justin, go ahead, take this one.
No, it can be super helpful, for sure, because reality is that day-to-day managers handle a lot of the things that tour managers handle on a day-to-day basis. When we're not on the road, when you're just handling scheduling for photo shoots and you got to fly them to this city and other cities and things like that, you're handling the same thing that we would handle. So it's good that the only thing, I've had a couple of scenarios where I've had day-to-day managers out, and I nip it in the bud before we even get to a situation. This is what I'm going to do every day. What are you going to do every day? Just make it very, very clear. If you need something from me, let me know. Let me know what you need me to do. My lane as a tour manager is to make sure that this tour runs. If you need me to fill in some of the day-to-day manager role, when you're not there, and even when you are there, I can do that. But just to have a clear understanding of what the need is, because somebody said it before, you're the tour manager, so you're a manager, you're a management representative, you represent the managers on the road for the tour. So just having a clear understanding, and as you said, you are a day-to-day manager. It goes both ways. We just really need to know why you're there, because a lot of times tour managers think that you're there to like keep tabs on them and make sure that things are running, the way that they're supposed to run. And it's like, well, why'd you hire me? What do you have me out here for?
Yeah.
if you don't trust me to be out here? So, just having that rapport and that relationship and just the conversation, it can save for a huge headache, because I've been in scenarios where it's like, all right, the day-to-day manager is here, he's taking over, so I'm gonna go in my office and do some accounting.
Oh, I want to jump in on that one actually. I have three perspectives on this, because when I first started working with Masego, his manager came out on the first run with us, and there's three things I gained from that. A, because I was fulfilling the role of many duties as a VJ, LD, PM, and TM, him being there was kind of a big help for the things that I couldn't do. Like just simple things for the artists, or just kind of handling more press things if I couldn't be there. So that was one thing. The other was kind of helping the transition, because a lot of these artists, that their manager is their TM. So that transition, having them there helps the artist trust you as a TM, and also gets you guys to understand how the dynamics are going to work moving forward. But also on the negative side, it's kind of what I think Justin spoke on, was micromanaging can kind of take a role, and that can kind of be frustrating sometimes.
The little ding went off at the perfect time.
No, sorry, I was saying you heard it.
That's good.
That was my thoughts.
Keep going. Actually, I'll take over on the micromanaging thing. That it's a really, really fine line, and we tend to run into it when day-to-days come in hand, or even managers. There's some managers these days, because the thing about the music industry is there's no rules. There's no rules saying the manager can't be there. There's no rules saying they should be there. So it's kind of however they like to function. Typically, the older managers who manage multiple artists aren't going to be out with you. But if it's a homie that, is grown with the artist, they're going to want to be out there, whether it's having fun or just keeping tabs on people. But we try now, as our, reputation is grown and we have a good crew, like we try and just be like, hey man, you guys hired us for a reason. Just, let us do our thing. We're not here to steal or fuck you guys over. We want the show and tour to run well. And it seems to work out, but sometimes it's a little bit of a battle. But great question, man. And don't be that day-to-day out on the road.
One thing on that, I don't want to drag this out on you, there is a good side as well to having the manager out there at the same time. How to utilize them, because they typically have like a deeper connection with the artist, where if you need to get them to do something, you can utilize the day-to-day manager to kind of talk to them and get them level-headed and see things from like a more clear-headed perspective, whereas they might not trust you the same way, especially in the beginning. So I feel like you can definitely use it to your advantage. It's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Cal. Appreciate that, by the way. Mateen, if that's how you say it.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Nice. Look at that.
Hey, yeah. So hi, Mateen. I had like a more general question kind of for all of you guys. Where do you see the company going in the future, like in the next 5 years or so? Do you want to add more positions? Do you want to add internships? Do you want to expand into other genres? I don't, like where do you see it going?
Awesome. I guess I'll take the lead on that, and then give anyone else maybe some of the panel has some interesting things to say too. We started out. I like to not keep the plans too concrete for Wasted because it's such an ever flowing thing that changes all the time. And we got here by not having, there was no, when I started Wasted Potential, I wasn't like, all right, we're going to do everything in the music industry, in the touring realm. It just kind of happened. I had to learn lighting, and then we have an awesome lighting team and all these awesome tour managers that have just come in, and some of them are just, college friends of mine. And I think I really want to get the media side of Wasted Potential growing more and more. So we have such good access and relationship with these artists. I want to, showcase that in creative ways. I kind of want to get us back to booking shows like we did back in the day, but doing it in different ways. Like Levi was saying, with maybe a 20-person setting, high ticket prices, or maybe 100 people, no phones, record it, put it on our YouTube channel, stuff like that. There's some really interesting things to do. But different genres. Yeah. I mean, we worked with Dan and Shay on visuals. I would like to kind of go in. I know Cotton's a huge country music fan. So we'll hopefully get into that world for him in the next couple years. As he sips his drink.
Cheers.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's naturally growing. We've went from, it was maybe just 6 of us 3-4 years ago, and now we have, I'd say, over 50 people on our team. So it's just slowly has, grown over the years, and hopefully it just keeps going. And hopefully we have, some of you guys in here as big parts of the team. So that'd be great.
Yeah, mind if I say something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So one of our attendees his name's Jesse Frank, and he actually came to me seeking kind of a mentorship on this. And he himself landed himself his own artist, which was he went on tour, with Manny on the Chelsea Color Tour. So I think it's pretty cool. If you guys as TMs, even if you have existing clients, coming to us and seeking our advice is something I think it's just, I don't know, a big step forward for your career, but also us, because it helps us as TMs better understand everything we've done and what we can do differently moving forward.
Yeah. And we like to bring people in and have them just be part of our team. Ex-Lovers, we'll probably work with Jesse and do production, and he'll be a Wasted Potential tour manager, and we'll all just kind of grow together. And then when he's not on tour with Ex-Lovers, he'll go out with some other artists that we have or something. So we like to do that. Anybody else have on that, or we want to just keep it rolling? All good?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to talking more. What else do we got here? Let's go to Hugo Alvarez. If you want to unmute yourself. What's up, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Great. First of all, thank you for this time on this space. I think we can learn a lot from you. And my question is, maybe Justin already answered a little bit, but you as a TM, your responsibilities are to run that tour that works correctly. But have you ever include that you look for new dates, closing new dates or new shows? Or it's only about the tour, the logistics, the production, the shows?
That's a good question. A lot of people tend to think the tour manager actually books shows for the artists as well. But we actually just straight up. Cotton, you want to take this? I'll let you take this one. Can you hear me? Yeah, you're muted, buddy.
Froze.
There you go.
Sorry, my screen froze. Sorry.
All good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm assuming the question is, does TM in charge of booking?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Typically, no. I mean, a lot of people think that, so we kind of get offers, and then when that happens, you typically just forward that to the agent. But typically, for like a decent sized artist agency handles all bookings, and the TM just handles the show portion. So like when something's booked, it's what's called a deal memo is created, and that includes how much the artist gets paid. They get a sound check, the performance slot. What's included as far as transportation, lodging, stuff like that. And then you have access to that, and then the TM would take all that information and start to advance the show. But typically, TMs do not handle artist booking.
Yep. It's a good thing to cover too. Awesome, Hugo. Appreciate you, man. Let's roll to Rachel's question. If you want to unmute yourself.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So my question is in regards to bus call. Have you ever had to deal with like a member missing when it's time to leave?
That's a great question.
Or being late often? Are there any limitations you guys set or restrictions?
Cool. Who wants to take that one? Cotton, you want to lead it and pass it after you're done?
Cotton's always late
Yeah,
to bus call. I don't know.
I'm not late. I'm never late to bus call. Yeah, it's been cases. I typically, how I run my operation or whatever, I don't change the time to accommodate someone else. Typically, if you're late, you typically get a warning. I like to have people there. If bus calls at 2 a.m., you should, be walking in about 1:45. I like to leave at 2 a.m. But yeah, you typically give a warning. And if not, it's been times where I have left people. The last tour I was just on, we had like a 6 a.m. bus call, and the guy was just knocked out in his hotel room. I couldn't get to him. I wound up leaving him. And then that happens, they're responsible for getting their own, self back as a lesson. He had to pay like a $300 Uber to get to the next city. And typically after that, he won't be late again. But yeah, it happens. It just, stuff happens. Sometimes, you go out, you meet people, you're having fun. So, it happens. But, when it becomes a repetitive thing, then you got to kind of, put your foot down and, handle it.
There's some other ways you could also, if you're talking about penalizing team members, some people have been docked per diems, or just a fee out of their cut. But even outside of bus call, like for some reason, this dude I had on a tour just would not stop shitting on the bus. So I ended up having to
No way.
Yeah, it was a fucking security guard, dude. But anyways, like at that point, like I just had to talk to management and be like, yo, we gotta dock this guy's pay. Like this is just not happening. And then it almost got to the point that I had to pretty much almost kick him off the run, but the artist just liked him that much. So I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, we could probably all go all day on that subject.
Yeah.
Bus call is a very interesting thing.
I think it's important also with bus call, as far as you have to determine the importance of the person you're leaving behind. You can't leave behind.
It's a factor.
The artist can't leave the artist.
Yeah,
obviously, but you also, you can't leave somebody that is an extreme part of the show that you would be fucked without. Basically, make sure that you're making the right decision, not just trying to spite somebody. Because as fun as it would be, it's not always the best decision. Not you're better off just waiting 15 minutes and getting the person. But if they're super late, you gotta go.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you for that question. I think let's take Mallory if you want to unmute yourself. Mallory Henry.
Yeah, not really a question, but I was just gonna say this is really helpful because I was gonna go on a tour tomorrow that you guys helped set me up on, and now obviously it's not happening. But I'm thankful to be learning with you guys still, and a chance to get to know you guys.
Definitely. Yeah. I know the tour you're talking about. It's a shame, but we're all kind of in that scenario now. And it makes it more easy to deal with knowing that all of us, we have a team and that all of us are in the same position. So we can, we're trying to do cool things. We made some custom hoodies and merch for everyone. And all the proceeds went to the Wasted Potential guys. We're going to be doing a quarantine collection which has the same thing. The proceeds will go to the Wasted Potential guys here in a few weeks, and doing stuff like this where we can get to know you guys and learn a little bit more from each other. So appreciate that.
Awesome.
Nico, if you want to mute yourself.
Hello.
What up, man?
My name is Niku.
Niku, got it.
Yeah, it's all good. It's my entire life I've been dealing with this. I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. I've worked with you guys briefly with tour manager Valentino Khan and Chad. I think helped out a lot with something that we had, a job we had recently.
Oh, what up? Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I knew your name from somewhere. We made that damn pumpkin head together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a question. This has been on my mind for a long time. Asking for a friend. How do you approach a situation where you have to wear many hats and you express to management and artists that, hey, like this is really I can't be 5 people at once and do my job efficiently. And then they say, oh, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. Just do your job. How do you approach that? Because like, it's an internal struggle because you don't want the show to suffer. So you do fill those other roles that need to be taken care of. So the show goes on perfect, like how you need it to. But you also are in a position where you're like, well, I kind of want the show to suffer because then they'll realize that they need to bring out more team members because it's at a level where you need a team, so like, how do you approach that situation where you express it, they say, oh, next year, when the fees are higher, but then that never happens. Things start getting stagnant. You're just constantly playing other roles, and that takes away from your ability to do your job. How do you approach that? Like, I've never been able to figure it out. Like, you just say, okay, well, I'm going to go find something else that doesn't require me to, run around doing 8 things at once, or, I don't know. I don't know how to approach it.
Man, that's a real problem for sure. Levi, do you want to start touching on this? Because you're kind of in that similar situation of doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, definitely. No, I had the same struggle. So I think, there's a few different ways to approach this. Like, if you find yourself in all those roles, you optionally did that. It wasn't like, I think you kind of become into that part, it's not like you sign on board to do all these roles.
Right.
And sometimes like I've had to negotiate my rate multiple times. One time sometimes you have to put your foot down and just be like, all right, look, I'm not going to VJ this run if my compensation's not going to move. So sometimes you can do that, and it's okay because you are an independent contractor. You're not an employee by them. So what your services are to them is what you provide. So you can choose and tell them what you want to, because they'll figure it out soon enough. You can also talk to the artist about that personally. And sometimes, man, depending on how it is, like if they're not going to work with you, like that's not an artist you want to stay and grow with. Sometimes you got to decide, like, is this artist really worth my time and my talent?
Yeah.
It's tough though. It's tough for sure.
Yeah, it's tough when you're in a position where like you don't have another artist to go to, or the artist doesn't want to talk about it because they're like, I have people that I hire to handle this, or it's a matter of like you've been with an artist for a long time and you're on salary, you're not an independent contractor at that point, and they just assume that you can handle it. You've done it before. The show looks great when you're a VJ and a TM and a PM. Why not do that? It's like it's gotten to the point where sometimes you're like, well, maybe I should let the show suffer so that they do realize that we need team members, and then there's an internal struggle of like, I don't want it to suffer because I want it to be the best show that can make it happen. It's like,
yeah, we run into a similar situation on the design side where it's like we get hit up, Migos will hit us up in 2 weeks and they'll have, oh, we got Coachella in 2 weeks. We need a massive set. And then we make it happen. And then they're like, all right, you only need to hit them up 2 weeks before a tour every time because it worked, So it's like if you create magic once, they're like, oh, yeah, you can just do that every time. So it's like it's a tough scenario. But unfortunately, there's no perfect answer. You know, with being the tour manager, I think you gain leverage. That's a leveraged position that they respect and value. And the biggest enemy of a lot of artists is change and surprises. So they don't want to be surprised by a new tour manager coming in. So hopefully they value you enough to kind of sit down and have that conversation. But it's interesting. Maybe we can dive more into that over the next few weeks. Because
I look forward to it, man. I really appreciate you guys, and obviously, there's nowhere to go right now, so I appreciate you guys doing this and sharing knowledge. It's really, and I would love to connect with everybody on these chats. I'll post my Instagram or whatever on the chat, and anybody that follows me, I'll follow back, and I'd love to connect with everyone. So
yeah, appreciate you, man. Yep.
Sure. I've been touring since 2013 professionally, so I can also be of assistance to anyone that has any questions.
Awesome.
Been through it all, so thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Malachi, if you want to unmute yourself, we got a couple more questions, and then we'll try and get this thing wrapped by maybe 10, 15.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Malachi, I didn't know this was the Malachi.
What's up, Malachi?
What's going on, guys? How you doing? My question is maybe to the tour managers or production managers is when you're awarded a new contract, how do you manage personnel that may have been there before or fill positions?
Justin or Cotton or someone want to take it?
It's a good question. I think it's almost like the same approach as if, somebody hires a new head coach, obviously I don't think nobody is in it to make power moves and, clean house and things like that. Obviously, when you come in, you have your own system and, your own team. So sometimes you have to remove the past people. But a lot of situations, I think I've done this twice where, Wasted has come in with a camp that has a team already in place. I think we've done well to merge the two. It is a challenge, sometimes, especially say for you, if I come in and I replace your old PM that you had a relationship with, then it can create some differences between me and you. So you kind of deal with that sometimes and let the person know hey, I'm not here to, take somebody's job or, do things like that. But it is a challenge. It does happen. Wasted is not the only company like this. So, you're going to get those, scenarios where, you're coming in and you're replacing someone, but I think the easiest way to handle it is just to be honest and be, forthcoming and saying that you're not, just have a good attitude and be nice and let them trust you. You got to build trust with the new people that you're working for, that working for you. But yeah, I think if you go in a situation like that, happy and with a good attitude and not trying to step on people's toes and things like that, I think those situations typically tend to handle themselves, in my opinion.
I feel like at the same time, you gotta be as an individual person out there as part of the crew, you gotta know that you're a contractor, you're independent. You are a family, but everyone man for themselves at the end of the day as well. And so you can't really take it personally, and you got to know that business is business and doesn't necessarily reflect what somebody thinks of a person or anything like that. So I think it's important as well.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, Malachi. Malachi's pretty much part of the Wasted team now. We met him with Juice, right? And then Ed, and who knows what else will happen.
Definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Peace, bro. Let's see what else we got left. Tanya, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we got you. You got some birds chirping in the background. Sounds great.
Thank you so much for doing this. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of my question and if we're gonna talk about this in a few weeks. but my question is, what are the next steps when an artist comes to you and tells you, like, I have this tour plan? What do you do? Like, do you set up meetings to plan what they think about the tour, what they are planning, I don't know, what are the next steps?
Got it. So essentially what happens after an artist contacts you interested in our services for, let's say, tour management, what are the next steps from there?
Yeah.
Cool. I guess I'll start with it and then just pass it on to Justin. Essentially, usually an artist will, it's interesting what we do because we could be already doing lighting for them or making visuals for them or something, one of our fields. And then maybe they're like, all right, well, we're interested in tour management as well. Typically, it kind of depends artist by artist, but typically we'll evaluate what they're doing wrong and the reason for the change, go over some things like budgets together, and then dive in. But anyone else on the panel? Justin, you want to talk a little bit about changing and obtaining a new client?
Yeah, you just said it. What I was going to say was identifying why there's a change. Once you identify that, figuring out how to change that. There was something that we're unhappy with the previous tour manager, previous PM, whatever, they could come in and clean up shop, get rid of everybody and bring in a new person. And so to your question, the next steps are to figure out what do you want? Like, what do you want? You have these tour dates. What do you want? Do you want this? Do you want a big tour? Do you want a big show? Do you want props? What do you want? And that's me and Cotton were actually talking about this the other day, because that's one of the things that really got me into wanting to be a tour manager was basically taking the idea of this show that this person wants to do and making it come to life. So, for me, like a lot of times I do have meetings with the artists. I have meetings with the artists. I have meetings with the managers to figure out budget-wise, what do they want to take home? You can't want, pyro at every show, but you don't have money for pyro. So kind of helping them understand, artists, they don't think about the money portion. They have a manager for that. They have a business manager for that. So they just think that this stuff just shows up and it works. But helping them understand what they have to spend per show is definitely one of the first steps that I take. And then, like I said, just analyzing the situation and figuring out what they want. It's all about them. And I actually tell that to artists. When I first come into a situation, I tell them, I'm here for you. I'm here to make what you want happen. However, I'm a realist, and I'm going to tell you that's not realistic for you as an artist in a nice way. It's not realistic for you to be on a van tour and we need a truck, and believe it or not, there are artists that expect those things to happen, and it's just not reality. So part of that is building that rapport, building that relationship with them to be able to have that conversation with them. And then, lots of meetings, lots of conversation to determine what the next steps are, what the tour looks like.
Okay. Yeah, that answers perfectly. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, there's a lot goes into it. I mean, there's we keep a whole list of things we have to do after starting it up. Anything from crew to transpo to whatever. It gets pretty crazy. That being said, that looks like the last question we had running for this session. This session obviously ran longer than an hour 15, which nothing's wrong with that. Let's just cap it off. We appreciate everyone coming in here. It looks like we had about 50 people total, which is great. If anyone has friends or people that they think might also be interested, feel free to just reach out to us on the email that you got invited on, and we can continue growing this little community and having these bigger talks, and we'll keep rocking it out every week. But like we said, next week we'll get into budgeting a tour. So that'll kind of tie off of this last question. It'll go from everything from deal memos, contracts, all that stuff.
Long one.
What's up?
It's gonna be a long one.
Contract, yeah, budgeting, but it's important. So yeah, we'll dive into that next week. So we appreciate you guys. Let us know if there's any suggestions on anything. We just kind of we threw this together, just trying to learn more about you guys and grow the tour management realm. So appreciate everyone. We will see you guys next Sunday.